Welcome to Employee Termination Tips. My name is Christopher Neufeld of Neufeld Legal. And in this particular video, we're going to discuss two ways that all too many Canadian salaried employees are not receiving their vacation pay or what would be the equivalent of their vacation pay. And we're not going to get into the other aspect of vacation pay, being the underpayment of vacation pay that we see transpiring in Canada. And this is a product of the failure to properly determine vacation pay in accordance with the employment standards legislation or the governing employment standards laws in a particular jurisdiction. Given that in Canada, there are at least 15 different employment payroll regimes. Some of them are called employment standards legislation, but there are at least 15 different regimes. And in fact, what happens in all too many places is they're not even calculated on the basis of any of those 15, but instead based on US payroll laws or US payroll methodology is the basis upon which vacation pay is in effect being calculated, which is entirely inappropriate. Similarly, being paid on the basis of one province's employment standards legislation when you're working in a different province or you're subject to another employment standards legislation or payroll regime creates problems because there almost always tend to be underpayments. Because if an employer can find a way to cut back on the amount of pay it makes to an employee and it's within the confines of law, you know the employers can take advantage of it. Meanwhile, if employers are failing to make payments, to receive payments, then it's too bad, so sad. It's not a matter for the employer to look into too much. But what we're going to focus in this particular video is on salaried employees and how you can identify possibly failures to pay vacation pay or the equivalent of vacation pay. One of the things you have to be careful about, first of all, is you have to look at the legislation. Because unfortunately, some of the government's websites, they have listed out information that is not entirely in line with the underlying legislation. And you got to remember, they're not reciting out legal opinion. They're providing some interpretation that's sometimes lazily done. And what happens is that even employment law commissions set up by the province even notice the potential illegality of these actions. But let's focus on two of the major ways that employees who are working on salary are not receiving their vacation pay. And it has to be particularized to each of the provinces. And our main province that we're dealing with is Alberta, but it also applies to other provinces. And one of the major ways you can discern this is that you look at your pay statements and you look at it for the year. You get paid your salary, but you don't see at any point in time a listing for vacation pay. Yes, you get time off for vacation, but there is no vacation pay that's being listed or paid out. And the thing is, in almost every one of the statutes, and all the case law pretty much says this, you get paid your salary, and based on what your salary is and other components that form your wages, you get paid vacation pay in addition to that. It's not a substitution, it's an addition. It has to be separately reported, recorded, and paid. And you got to remember also another thing. What you get paid as salary is a component of wages. What vacation pay is, it's the entirety of wages, oftentimes. And it can be more than the entirety of wages. For example, in Alberta, it is both a percentage of the wage amount, but the wage amount is not simply the wage amount for the current year. It is also the vacation pay that was paid in the preceding year, or should have been paid in the preceding year. So what happens is these are distinct numbers. It's not simply the same number. But beyond that, wages are wages and they're separate from vacation pay. That's how the statute is written. It's not written some other way. It's written that way. And you got to clearly demarcate it. If you're not doing that, you're going against, the employer is going against the statute. And how does it typically work? It works in favor of the employee. You can't just simply deduct it from it. So if you're not seeing vacation pay ever coming up in your pay statements, whether when you have vacation or at the end of the year it doesn't show up, there is the potential for a significant issue there. You gotta look at your contract naturally. The law is pretty specific on these things. Now, what's the second aspect? The second aspect is you do get vacation pay. And oftentimes you're getting your statutory holiday pay or general holiday pay. But what's done trickily about this, in my opinion, may well be permissible in the United States because it's not governed by the same type of legislation. And oftentimes it's governed just by contract. Is that whatever is paid by way of vacation pay or by way of holiday pay is deducted from your salary. So the net effect is that you get paid the same consistent amount, one or the other. So if you're getting paid $4,000 every 2 weeks or every half month, and half that time's on vacation and half that time is working, so you get $4,000 being listed as salary payment. Then you have a $2,000 vacation pay, but then you have oftentimes it's listed as a negative $2,000 payment, such that the net effect is $4,000 once again. What does that mean? Well, it means that your vacation pay has technically been paid, but your salary has been reduced. So in effect, what you could find yourself is 10% underpayment of salary when you include, after 5 years, both vacation pay and general holiday pay together, which typically represents somewhere in the range of 10%. Did you negotiate this? Was this agreed to? No. So if you got paid, let's say you're on a $100,000 salary, that's what your contract says. You have a $100,000 salary. That's your wage. That's part of your wages. Separate and apart from that and included by statute is your vacation pay at 6%, let's say, because you worked there for 5 years, and about another 4% is that holiday pay. So at the end of the day, when you look at your pay statement and you look for the year end and the cumulative, you see that $6,000. You see that $4,000. But when you look at the cumulative for your salary, you'll see $90,000. You should really be asking yourself, I don't know why more people don't ask themselves, your contract called for $100,000 salary. It allows permissible deductions. Permissible deductions are like deductions that are taken off for taxes. Your EI contribution, your CPP contribution. Maybe you have a matching RRSP plan with your employer, a matching pension plan where you contribute. Those are permissible deductions. Permissible deduction, especially most times you don't even see any mention of it, but even if it's in the contract, it's not really permissible. Is it permissible to deduct your vacation pay and your general holiday pay from it? Not really. The law is pretty clear. You set up a contract for a salary of $100,000. you should be entitled to be paid $100,000. Your employer is obligated by law to provide you the requisite weeks off, provide you statutory holidays off, provide you the vacation days off. If they want to provide you more than what's required, that's up to them. But your salary is your salary. And you should be getting paid your full salary. Not 90% of your salary. You're not on leave. You're on statutorily required time off. That's what the law calls for. You're required to be off in that time. Meanwhile, you agreed to get paid $100,000 for the year. You agreed to get paid $90,000. If you're getting paid $90,000, well, you should be listed in the contract as $90,000. And you should be able to have your employer deduct that money. It's not a permissible deduction. It's just, I'm going to deduct stuff from your contract? No. On top of the fact is that the unequal bargaining power of the employer is that such that you can't really even allow that. The courts don't really want to allow that. They've said that time over time over time. But all too often, that is what is happening. And employees are getting shafted in numerous ways if they're on salary. There's the calculation methodology that applies to all employees. But also with respect to salaried employees, either they're not getting paid their vacation pay, their statutory holiday pay, or the equivalent of it is being improperly deducted from their salary. Net effect is pretty much the same. Losing about early years 8% and subsequently 10%. And it's not permissible. It's contrary to the law. But if nobody picks it up, nobody raises it, nobody says, this is Canada. We have to operate under Canadian statutory law. You're not going to get anything changed. And that's what you need to be looking at from a salaried employee perspective to determine whether or not you're in fact getting paid all that you are due and what you're required by contract as well as the statute. Because it seems to be far too easy to overlook this. And it seems like far too many employment lawyers even, not just employees, but employment lawyers have overlooked this aspect. And the thing is, it's right there in the law. And probably because it's something that's occurring while people are employed and nobody really checks that stuff. And then when the only time they check it is when they get terminated, and then they're just focused on the back end. And the back end's important, don't get me wrong. Your termination pay is set by statute. Your severance pay has got a arrangement. But even there, if you don't know how to argue the other stuff, you don't look at the other stuff. When you think about it, I'll go back. If you have not been paid somewhere close to 8 to 10% of your required income, earnings, year over year, that builds up over time. That's legally your money, but that's something you have to look at. So take a look at it. And if you need any questions, feel free to give myself a shout because it's of considerable importance, of great importance to most people, especially those on salary when this is overlooked. Because earn money that you're entitled to and you need to get. Because not some fanciful demand. This is what the law states is required to be paid. If you haven't been paid, it's something you should be getting paid. And especially when you leave the job, you're not going to lose the job a second time. But it's your money. It's earned money. When you get fired, you get terminated. Even when you quit, collect on this money. Naturally, you want to talk to a lawyer, make sure everything's in line. But you should be looking at this money because it's your money. You've earned it and you're entitled to it. Thank you.